Welcome to Tabard, y'all, a weekly podcast about the stories we tell and the events we discuss while on pilgrimage as queer Catholics. I'm Jacob Flores, coming on my first year for a few things. One, being fully baptized Catholic.
Oh, yeah.
And the second, being a cowboy boot wearing, y'all saying, and Whataburger eating Texan.
Year two, that one's going to flow a little better. You'll have it down, but you absolutely have
I slowed it down just for the audience.
boot wearing.
I'm not from Arkansas.
And I'm his husband, Jacob. I'm so glad you didn't spit into the microphone.
Welcome back. This is 2 weeks of not seeing each other doing the podcast.
Not seeing each other. We're doing this in the morning instead of in the evening. So, oh, man.
Who are you?
I'm his husband, Patrick Flores, the sassy gay flight attendant of the Catholic Church. I can show you around and keep you safe, and you're probably going to wonder if I'm gay when you should have just assumed all along that I was.
Sassy? Do you have another personality when you're working?
I'm not sassy with you. Yes, I can definitely be sassy at work.
I don't see that. Who are you?
All right, Jacob, what have we got on the podcast today?
All right, you guys. It's the wedding podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Or episode.
I'll throw some air horn effects in there.
Please don't. All right, today we're going to talk about our wedding, what went into the planning, everything leading up to it, and the drama that ensued.
Ooh, the drama.
Wedding. I'm kidding. There was no drama.
Who showed up 5 minutes late? Let's drag them.
Who threw wine at my mom?
Wow, that escalated. Hey, y'all, so there's a couple reasons we wanted to talk about our wedding. One is that it's just fun, and I know that a lot of y'all have been wanting to hear about it. There's also another reason, which is that years ago, when I was kind of coming to terms with my own sexuality, I remember going to a lot of my straight friends' weddings, especially Catholic weddings, and there was a moment when I was watching two of my very good friends up there on the altar, and they're about to say their vows, and for a moment, I allowed myself to picture what it would be like if I got married. Mm-hmm. But like for the very first time, I allowed myself to even just imagine what it would be like if I had a man standing right across the aisle from me.
Did you, prior to that specific wedding, did you imagine yourself being with a woman up there, or did you just not think about that at all?
I never thought about myself in a wedding previously.
Yeah.
So it wasn't quite a, like a fantasy or a lot, imagining myself to picture myself straight. It was just I couldn't even picture myself up there at all. And then suddenly I allowed myself to, in the way that the only way that I could imagine it actually kind of, working. And honestly, the emotion that I felt inside was that it was the dirtiest thing that I had ever done. Like, it felt worse than I would feel like when I looked at porn or anything like that. It felt deep down inside like something had been kind of betrayed and done wrong. And so in the times that I've tried to imagine since then what it would be like to get married, like it involved like an emotional part too. It wasn't just like this intellectual, like, oh, these are the things I want to have done. It was also a picturing what would be actually good and valid and wonderful about me getting married. And so we wanted to share kind of a little bit of some of the stories and what our wedding was like with all of you, so that anybody who might be in a similar place of struggling to imagine what seeing themselves actually get married, especially in kind of a Catholic way, might look like, and struggling to see that as a good thing. You might have at least a bit of a glimpse in something that you can say, oh, I can see a bit more now of how I might be able to do it.
Growing up, I just thought I was gonna never get married.
Did you really?
I mean, I didn't have an issue with like the whole being gay thing. Like, I knew I was gay, and I didn't see it as being an issue. But I just thought I was gonna grow up to being a single dad driving a Volvo.
That seems very on brand.
Yeah, and it was weird. Like, that was like what I saw my future as. I don't know if that's sad. That's not sad.
I don't think it's sad.
No, that's not sad. I was completely fine with that. But
right.
Yeah, I never thought I'd marry a flight attendant.
Was there a point where you started to feel a change? If you're like, oh, this isn't quite how I'm imagining my life turning out. I'm starting to see it maybe as marriage being a real possibility.
Yeah, once dating started turning into long-term relationships,
Yeah.
that were getting serious, like beyond the 2-3 year point.
Right.
That's when, you start thinking like, oh, what are the next steps? But never really put emphasis in thinking about a wedding.
Yeah.
So,
All right. That
anyways.
makes sense. So for us, do you remember when we first started kind of hinting around and started talking about like what if we might get married?
I remember going out. We got drinks one night, and we were getting ready for bed. I kissed you goodnight, and I said, I'm going to fucking marry you. And you didn't say anything. You just laid there, and I was just like, but I was drunk, so I just was like, whatever, I said it.
Right.
I said what was on my heart. So I remember that. And then I remember the conversations like several months later where we actually started talking about it and, like what we would do when we would ask your parents.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for their blessing, but just to kind of run it by them.
Yeah, and wanting them to kind of at least be involved in some level. I do remember that moment when you said I'm going to fucking marry you,
right.
and I remember like having suddenly my mind started going a million miles a minute, not because I didn't want that, but because I couldn't tell how serious you were, because I knew you were drunk, and I didn't want me to be taking it super seriously and wake up in the morning and be like, oh, I was just like joking around, and then me have kind of like egg on my face of like really revealing how much I was wanting it to happen and it to be going in that direction. And so it was, though, like once it settled in, like I remember that being like a real relief for me of like this kind of validation of like, oh no, I think like that was real, and that was like an inner desire of his kind of drunkenly being revealed.
Yeah, I'm an honest person when I'm drunk too.
Yep. Entirely true.
What about you? What do you recall? I mean, beyond that, I guess what did the conversations look like after I drunkenly revealed that to you?
Well, I remember there being, in my mind, two big kind of hurdles as far as what would make a marriage a little more difficult to kind of bring about, as far as like these are things we're going to have to think about. And one was just kind of like my family in general, and by family I mean church, everything that's kind of involved of especially at that moment, not knowing where everybody in my family was at and how supportive they would be, and would anybody actually be upset by it. And
we had our assumptions, or had a pretty solid pulse check on where people were as far as how far along they were to being affirming of our relationship.
Right. And but also them being extremely kind when like we come over for Thanksgiving is a wonderful step and level, but them also being like, I'm gonna help you plan your wedding, like that's a whole nother level, and involves a whole nother level of commitment of themselves, of them to affirming our relationship, especially in kind of a public way. Like that's no longer just a Patrick's boyfriend is coming over for Thanksgiving. That's a much bigger thing. So I remember that being a like, wow, I need to wrap my head around how to bring this up and how to kind of tackle that as an issue. And then honestly, the other big thing in the back of my head was finances. Was like, wow, are we ready for, not that we're not ready emotionally to get married, but are we ready for a wedding to pull that off? And then also, are we, ready for just like whatever next steps in life kind of follow from a wedding? Yeah.
I wanted, to be honest, when we first started actually talking about the wedding, I was very on board with doing kind of the courthouse wedding and then renting out a restaurant and a bar afterwards and just inviting all our friends and family.
Yep.
In my mind, that was the most financially efficient and conservative.
Yeah.
But there was a large part of like the experience of actually getting married missing from that. So
I remember you bringing that up and seeming like the most reasonable decision as far as if we were going to have a wedding that's based off of where we're at today. Yeah, like a courthouse wedding, and just have anybody who wants to come meet us at a restaurant, like that would be a wonderful ceremony and also reflect where we're at in life. Mm-hmm. And then I remember us having the conversations of like, okay, but what is the wedding that we want? Like we only get to do it once.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that would be really meaningful to us? And for me, it was, is there any way that we could make it a little bit more Catholic? Like that for me was probably the most important thing. Before we get into the ceremony itself and planning that out, do you remember how the proposal went down?
So we were living in Seattle at the time, and I believe it was October 24th.
Right.
So a typical day in the work week that I had was I would walk to work downtown Seattle, and then I'd walk back, and Pat would be cooking, and our dog would be going crazy at the door and greeting me. So that was kind of our weekly ritual.
Yeah, that was our routine.
Yeah, and I would usually bring a bottle of wine home from walking home. So this time I open the door. The dog isn't greeting me at the door. Pat's not in the kitchen, and our front door was directly.
You walked into the
kitchen, but the food was on the stove cooking, and I'm like, this is weird and kind of dangerous, and. So I'm thinking, oh, they're outside walking, or he's going potty. I don't know.
The dog, not me.
Yeah, the dog.
Pat's going potty.
Oh, gross. And all of a sudden, I see our dog Oakley running from around the corner,
sprinting
to me. But then I also see Pat kind of like shuffling around the corner in the living room, and I'm like, what is he doing?
Yeah.
I didn't notice Oakley, our dog. Like, I was more paying attention to why is Pat being weird right now. So Pat came out, and I'm greeting the dog, our dog Oakley, again. And then I noticed there's a tag tied around his neck. Very nicely done. And it basically says, Jacob, will you marry me? And there's a ring tied to it. And I didn't know what was going on for a second, because I was like, just getting off work.
And I don't think you noticed the ring right away. You saw the tag,
yeah,
which said, Jacob, will you marry me? Which I don't want to get in your head yet, but I have a feeling just that enough you were trying to figure out, was I joking or was that for real?
Yes. I think
that's the way it came off as I was watching you react to it, was you're like, ha ha ha, like, what is this?
Yeah, and I think just being the end of the day and like kind of decompressing from work and charging and fighting through downtown traffic, I didn't fully comprehend what was going on. But then once I looked at you and you were kind of like waiting for me to react, I was like, no way.
Right.
Did I ask you, are you serious?
Yep.
Yeah. I asked you if you were serious, but very cute.
What I did not totally plan well, because I was having Oakley be the basically the ring bearer for the proposal, was that he would have the ring, and I didn't. In my back of my head, I was like, oh, this is the point where I'm supposed to get down on one knee, but it didn't feel right because I didn't have the ring to present to you. So I didn't end up getting down on one knee.
I'm glad you didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never asked you exactly how you felt about that fact. It's such a tradition.
Yeah, I'm glad you didn't. When you were telling me about your initial thoughts, like your options of how to propose.
Yes.
Like doing it in the park in front of the public.
Eiffel Tower.
Yeah. I would. That makes it doesn't make me cringe because I think it's cheesy. It makes me cringe because I hate being in the public eye.
Right.
So this was by far much more preferred. It was perfect. It was intimate, and I guess I should clarify why you had the dog involved.
Yeah.
We absolutely adore our dog Oakley. He's like I would say like he takes up 90% of our lives when we're home.
Yeah.
But he's the perfect little chunk. So
we are the stereotypical gay dads who put way too much emotional not maybe too much, but just an enormous amount.
But in a healthy way, not like...
Oh, for sure, yeah. We don't dress him up. We don't,
ask
him what he wants for breakfast. Like, there's none of that.
Yeah. I will talk to him in a baby voice sometimes. So, anyways, but yeah, it was perfect. Very intimate, and I absolutely adored it.
All right. So getting into the planning parts, once we started to kind of allow ourselves to think like, well, what do we want in a wedding? What were the most important parts to you that you wanted to make happen?
The most important parts were having our close friends and family there. That is all that really mattered to me.
Yeah.
I didn't really think beyond like, okay, we just need like a justice of the peace or, someone actually doing the ceremony for us and then having a reception. And the reception was less of priority, but it was a way for us to celebrate with family and friends.
Yeah. I think
break bread
you
with
definitely
them.
wanted it to be a special setting and space just to be able to feel comfortable and really, celebrate with friends and family.
Exactly, yeah. And that's where I was thinking, like, it could have gone either way. It could have gone to a really nice environment, like a nice restaurant or bar, which would have been super expensive, but still cheaper than most weddings that I've seen when we were calculating some of the costs. Or it could have gone very divey and super fun and memorable. So celebrating with family and friends was the most important thing to me. And I know you brought up like having it being Catholic, so kind of explain what the priorities were for you.
Yeah, I basically wanted it to be as much of a Catholic wedding as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we would never get permission to actually have the ceremony in a Catholic church, nor would we have any permission of having a priest or anybody kind of in an official Catholic Church capacity be able to do it. So what we ended up doing is asking two of my good friends from high school and from church basically to perform the ceremony. They're married, but basically I went through the Catholic order of the Mass for a wedding ceremony and changed some of the pronouns, and I tried to keep all of the actual prayers and the rhythm and the readings and the exchange of the vows as closely Catholic as possible without it being awkward of it being, bride and groom and stuff like that. So there was very little that was actually changed, which for me was really important. I wanted it to feel like that ceremony that when I had imagined it felt so dirty, so long ago. Like I wanted it to be that, but to be actually ours, and for it to be special and to feel good.
Yeah, and especially our faith has been such an important part of our relationship.
Yep.
So I feel like that really adds to it.
It didn't feel stressed or like a weird add-on.
Yeah.
Like I know for some straight couples who may have, grown up Catholic, or one of them grew up Catholic, but maybe their faith isn't a huge part of it, and then they go to have a Catholic ceremony and they don't quite know how to act in it, which is fine. Like that's absolutely no judgment for anybody in that place. But for us, it felt like a very natural and comfortable fit.
Yeah, and I think one thing to point out, which reminded me when you just said kind of being that awkward experience when you get there, it still felt very Catholic for us because the elements of the Mass were there without communion and all that. But you'll go to a Catholic wedding and you'll notice, family members who aren't Catholic, they stand out like a sore thumb because it feels alien to them.
Yeah, and there's enough participation that you have to do, even if it's as simple as standing, kneeling, making the sign of the cross.
That I didn't feel that at our wedding.
Yeah.
Even though the wedding day was like, it seemed like it was only 15 seconds long.
And even though that probably half of the people that were there are not Catholic.
Yeah. Surprisingly, a good portion on my side, they either were Catholic or are still Catholic.
Yep.
Yeah. Which I didn't know until after the wedding. But yeah, it didn't, I guess from my perspective, it didn't seem like anyone felt awkward being a part of a faith-based ceremony.
No, not at all. And it was also a very comfortable setting. We had it at a ranch, which I think we've mentioned before, but it was at a ranch outside of Austin, and this awesome
shout out to Tiny T Ranch.
Tiny T Ranch, and Spike is the owner. She describes herself as a punk rock grandma. And so she's all tatted up and has, pigtails down to her butt, and she's just like this tiny little amazing firecracker. And she owns the ranch, and she had a chapel, this really cute chapel, moved from West Texas to her property here outside Austin. And we were, the chapel can't fit more than 6 people inside, so we weren't able to have the ceremony inside the chapel. But basically the way we had it set up was benches sitting in front of the chapel, and then the vows were exchanged on kind of the footsteps of the chapel. So it had this really cute kind of Western feel to it, but also it was outside. It was a gorgeous day.
Yeah, very gorgeous day during sunset, in which many people on my side of the family who aren't from Texas asked me with confusion why we would plan a wedding in the middle of winter, February 1st.
Which is a recipe for rain and cold and gray skies
in Seattle. But it was actually the most perfect day as far as weather goes and everything else. It was, 72, 73 degrees outside?
And why, pray tell, was it the perfect weather day?
Okay, so that leads us to a quirky Southern tradition where the bride and or the fiancés, bride and groom to be, the couple will bury a bottle of bourbon at the site of their wedding. Typically about a month before. We didn't do it exactly a month before because that's January 1st. So that's logistics. That's kind of weird.
Right.
So we did it, I think, end of December. Yeah, a couple days before end of the year.
We were within the margin of error.
Yeah.
Tradition goes, you bury it upside down a month in advance.
In the ground on the site of the wedding. And that will bring perfect weather for your wedding.
Only if the day of you
dig it up.
And
it's still intact.
And you have to drink from it. It's not like there's several steps involved to the ceremony. So we did it right before the ceremony was about to begin, which for me was a cause of a lot of anxiety because it was not a gigantic bottle of bourbon. And we had everybody showing up because we were running a little bit late.
Oh, yeah. It was meant to be only for family and very close friends.
Yeah, because I was imagining, everyone there will want to, kind of like take a swig.
Yeah.
And we'll pass it around. But if we have everybody there, there's no way. It's going to be awkward. We're going to run out halfway through.
No.
But lo and behold, every single person took a swig from it that wanted to, and it made it all the way around, which was really neat. It was really that was one of my favorite parts of the day was watching that bottle get passed around.
Yeah, and everyone's cringy faces when they took a shot of 9-banded whiskey based here in Austin, Texas.
Perfect way to start a wedding.
Yeah. So that was really fun, and I guess one of the cute parts of that whole thing, and I don't mean to bring the dog up again, but our dog Oakley, when we buried the bottle, he helped dig the hole and he went to town on it. And then he also helped dig it up the day of the wedding. Yeah, so people were having a kick out of that. We'll definitely provide pictures of
yeah, we'll try and put those in the show notes, and if not, we'll link to a spot where you can see them. As part of our marriage prep, which is it's a big piece of most Catholic weddings, and I think most faith-based weddings is the idea that
what's it called in the Catholic faith? Cana?
Cana. Yeah, pre-Cana. And so it's a time when you would typically meet for a couple of weeks in advance up to the wedding with the priest to make sure that you're ready. And so as part of kind of the pastors who were leading us in this marriage prep, we had to write letters to each other. And the idea was kind of, write a letter to your husband to be explaining why you want to get married and, what the relationship means to you. And then also, he was going to be using it in his sermon as some of the stories would be shared and stuff like that. So make sure you had a couple of good stories in there. And we ended up, we were supposed to do it the night before, but because we were so busy with all the setup and all the craziness going on, we didn't exchange the letters until right before the ceremony. Like literally we're all dressed up and we're about to go walk down the aisle.
So we exchanged the letters. I was actually last minute writing it. I already had it written out. But
you had it in your head. It just you wanted it to
I had
nice.
It on Google Doc, but I didn't have it written out on paper. It was crazy because it was a DIY wedding pretty much. So we were very hands-on. But 15 minutes before the ceremony was to begin, we were in the hall where the reception was to be, and we exchange letters, and it's just you and I and our friends who were doing the photography.
Right.
We're reading the letters and absolutely sobbing.
Yep. Didn't make it through the first paragraph, basically, before like tears started coming down, and then I saw you crying, and that is what
Set you off?
set me off, and I was just a mess.
Oh, it was bad. My eyes were puffy. My nose was leaking. It just not a cute look when you are about to walk down the aisle.
So, tip for all of you that are thinking about getting married: exchange your letters the day before. Do not do it right before you're about to go down.
Or if you're doing like the first look, do it hours in advance.
Because not only, first of all, that was a really, wonderful and powerful moment. We
Yeah.
joke about how we looked like idiots, but it was, I don't know, it was a
stood
very
out, yeah.
meaningful way to start the ceremony of pausing and actually coming back to just our relationship.
Yeah.
That for me was a major standout point. But even like it kind of primed us emotionally for the rest of the ceremony. So like the second you saw your mom, we were each going to be walking our moms down the aisle. And the second you saw her, you lost it all over again. At multiple points during the ceremony, I was for sure just like, as we're sitting listening to either like the sermon or just our friends do the readings or anything like that.
I guess let's move into the ceremony. And as far as the readings, all right, let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
From when we walked our moms down the aisle.
Right.
So I walked my mom down the aisle first, crying. My mom was crying too, and and our dog walked me down the aisle.
Yeah,
too.
he was right there with you.
So that happened. You walked your mom down the aisle, and then the ceremony started. And it was nice because both of our friends were up at kind of, I guess, the steps of the chapel waiting for us to greet us.
Yeah.
But tell us how the rest of it went.
Yeah, so pretty quickly they kind of did a quick greeting and welcome, and then we sat down and were the readings started, and we had picked out the readings as the couple kind of typically does in a wedding ceremony, and they the readings were beautifully done. My friend Adam did the music for
Oh my God
the ceremony, so he did one of the psalms. My brother Shane did one of the readings, but he couldn't figure out how to lower the microphone. Shane's very tall.
He's too tall.
He was hunched over, and you still couldn't even hear him because he couldn't get to the point where his face was actually in front of the microphone.
He was reading the verse or the scripture of wives submit to your husbands.
We did not pick that. Stop it. And so then we had the exchanging of the vows.
And your brother Ben, don't forget about Ben.
Oh yeah.
And Katya.
Yeah. Ben and Katya was a little bit later.
Yeah.
So we had the actual exchange of the vows, which everyone talks about how it's kind of it's a word. The ceremony goes by so fast, and you'll blink and it's over. Yeah. And I don't know, things kind of slowed down for me for a minute there
at the ceremony.
At the actual ceremony during the exchange of vows. I was so incredibly grateful to have friends there actually doing the ceremony because they were there just having like their smile and seeing their joy as they were kind of prompting us through the vows. That helped me.
It didn't seem rushed either. It was as if they were holding our hands through the process.
Right.
Yeah.
It was, that was deeply, I don't know. It just, everything about the ceremony felt right. Nothing about it felt forced. Nothing felt foreign. It all felt like just a deepening of our actual relationship and an affirmation and a celebration of it. So right after the vows, one thing that was important to me was having the consecration to Mary, which is kind of a typical Catholic wedding ceremony. It's one of the things that really stands out in a Catholic wedding ceremony from even other Protestant ceremonies. And so it's a moment where the couple typically will kind of go to wherever there is a Marian image or statue in the church, and they'll consecrate their marriage to Mary.
Not consummate, like Aaron kept saying.
Poor Aaron, as she was practicing, kept saying that, and now the couple will consummate their marriage. We're like, nope. That's not what we're going to be doing. And inside the this cute little Texas chapel, we had set up a kind of an altar that had some images of Mary from our home, and we went inside and said some prayers, and while Adam was outside kind of playing guitar. And that was a moment of for me, just kind of a lot of peace in the middle of that ceremony.
Yeah.
I don't think that, and none of it felt rushed by any means.
No.
But that was a real moment where we were able to just pause and just kind of be in the moment.
Yeah.
And that for me was really wonderful. Yeah, and then after that, pretty much it was the presentation, and so they were able to say, hey, here's the couple, and everybody cheers, and then we kind of walked back down the aisle, and it was that from that point on, that was a rush. That was when all of a sudden I'm trying to remember like what all happened. And I'm struggling to kind of even.
Photos needed to happen.
Right.
I'm glad everyone was taken care of, but for us, I feel like it was a lot because there was the family photos, there was a couple photos, and then like transferring, random stuff that was at the chapel that needed to go to the reception hall.
Yeah.
But
so after we had the photos, or while those photos were going on, everybody went over to the reception hall, where you had set up and found this amazing bartender who was there waiting.
Yeah, so this bartender, Wally, super great guy. Him and his friend, they own an old like vintage red trailer.
Very vintage.
Yeah,
like from the 70s.
Yeah, it's super cute. And what really stood out too was their trailer is red, and then there's also a really old vintage Chevy or Ford truck that's on the farm property that's right there. So it kind of matched. It matched. Outside of the reception hall, there's string lights. It's very outdoorsy. The weather's perfect, and
so now it's sunset.
It's sunset, and this trailer, they're doing bartending. They're bartending out of the trailer. So it's super cute, and everyone's just outside hanging out, and it was just nice to see all of our friends and family mingling together, and not like being weird and like sitting at the table with the only the people that they know.
No, everybody was outside hanging out and having a really good time.
Yeah,
we had. You had found a kind of signature cocktail that we wanted to do that involved the 9-banded whiskey that had been buried. Yeah. And so those were very popular with everybody. It was, being able to walk over and just see all of our friends and family having a fantastic time together, and not, like you were saying, kind of isolated and atomized and grouped out. That was just it was a real relief and joy to be able to then walk into that as now a married couple. After that, we moved into the dinner portion, which we had found an Austin company that does Korean-style tacos called cilantro.
Yeah,
to cater for us, which I knew would involve at least some level of prep for everybody out there, that I would need to get up on the microphone and say, kind of, here's what we have. Here's kind of how to build your own, taco. What was it? Apparently I kept saying something.
It's got a kick.
Oh yeah. Apparently to every item I'd be like, and there's black beans. Be careful, they got a kick. And there's
a kimchi.
There's kimchi fries, and they got a little kick to them. I was getting dragged by everybody.
I think you felt the need to do that because we were in Texas, and not a lot of people are, I guess, exposed or have exposure to Korean food.
No, there was a lot of like, what's kimchi? Was there a definite expectation of your typical, like, you have like the chicken, the salad, the mashed potatoes and stuff. And so like I wanted to make sure that everybody knew this wasn't, we wanted something a little bit different, a little bit fun. And so don't go, if you're not ready for a little bit of a kick, don't go all in on some of that stuff. But apparently I was saying it after every single item. But it was a wonderful meal. And then we, cleared out some of the tables for the dance floor, and we had our first dance, which we had asked my friend Adam to play live our first dance.
who is a musician, not magician. I mean, he does magic. He's a musician in Boston.
He's a professional musician. That's
Yeah,
right.
and plays with the Boston Pops.
Yeah.
So,
But
yeah.
also is a singer-songwriter.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we asked him to bring his guitar, and so we had chosen Bloom by the Paper Kites as our first dance song, and we had asked him to play it, and he more than nailed it. Like, it was so beautiful. And right before walking over, as we were finishing up the photos, I pulled you aside and said, wait, hang on, we haven't practiced any kind of first dance. And I think I kind of caught you off guard, like, what is there to practice? But for me, I was thinking, like, wait, this is the moment when everybody's
watching,
eyes will be on us. Like, let's make sure that even if all we're doing is just like a simple slow dance, like, let's make sure that we know exactly what we're doing, because I don't want to get in front of everybody and mess this up. And both of us during the dance, I think almost exclusively, I noticed afterwards, like, had our eyes closed.
Yeah.
I can't get out. Can I be close to you? Ooh, ooh. Can I be close to you? Ooh.
And it was just a super intimate moment. Like, I remember noticing Adam at the beginning, and then after that, I didn't notice anything else.
I think a part of me was I had my eyes closed because it felt natural, but also I didn't want to, like, focus on everyone watching.
Right.
So then it was just you and me, embracing each other, and yeah, it didn't feel awkward at all.
Adam told us afterwards that very early on in the song that he had to close his eyes while playing to make sure that he didn't cry, because he was like, as I was watching you all, I started to tear up, and I didn't want to mess up the song for you guys, which is incredibly sweet.
Now that it's you, can I be close to you? Ooh, ooh.
Another really beautiful moment for me was seeing your mom and brother kind of really, I would say, come out of their shells in a big way.
My mom is shy for sure, but my brother, I guess some context. My brother and I are 12 years apart.
Yeah.
So I had left home at 18 when he was, what is that, 7?
Mm-hmm.
No.
I'm terrible at math, so I'm like, yep, that's it.
Can you please delete this? You're going to delete this.
No, this is staying.
No. 18, 12, 6. 6.
So you were right there.
I said 7.
Oh, great.
Okay, so I had left when he was still young, so seeing him kind of in those pivotal stages of life of, like, end of high school, throughout high school, and then, turning 18, turning 21, we were, we still kept in touch and all that, but I wasn't there, living with them to see that. So it was really amazing and nice to see my brother kind of in this element and, kind of another side of him that I don't know.
He was, like, thriving in that element. He was taking care of folks. He was doing toasts. He was making sure that he met everybody and that everybody was taken care of. Like, that whole kind of side of, like, this is a family event, and he wanted to make sure that it was, just, running well, and everybody was taken care of and comfortable and everything.
Yeah.
Like, he was excelling at that. He did such a great job.
That's definitely, that comes from my dad. My dad was very much like that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, seeing that was very reminiscent of my dad. So
Yeah, that made me really happy.
yeah. I guess for your family too, seeing your mom and dad out there just dancing. Shane was dancing a lot. Shane and Marley.
And Kyle was
was but yeah, just seeing everybody out there smiling and just having a good time. I think that was a really huge highlight.
All my mom ever wants out of a wedding is good music. Like,
Yeah.
she just wants to dance, and so the second we turned on, like, Whitney Houston, she was just like,
I think that was the first song, and everybody went crazy.
yeah. So she was bolting to the floor, and I don't think I saw her leave it. So that made me happy too.
So the first dance, the ceremony or the reception, all the dancing, That was all great. What was also great was Adam and a couple of other friends thought of like, oh, it's outside, it's on our ranch, let's build a s'mores station.
Yeah.
So they built a bonfire in the back, and that was really popular. I didn't realize like how many people were actually going back there and hanging out. So it was nice because everyone, like, you weren't confined to the reception hall.
No, like, a lot of weddings where you go out and dance for a little bit, and then you're like, okay, maybe this isn't my song.
Yeah.
Or I'm a little tired.
Or you just don't like dancing.
Yeah, and you like retreat back to the table or something, and then there's a couple people just sitting there quietly at the table, and it's like,
and not to say like
it's not like terribly
bad.
awkward because like, yeah, like this is like standard for a wedding, or
Yeah.
maybe you're able to escape outside or something like that and have a moment of quiet. The beautiful thing about having it on a ranch like this was that, once you stepped outside, there was still like places to hang out.
Mm-hmm.
And like you were saying, like they put together this s'mores bonfire. So there was, kind of something you could go and do and hang out and have it still feel like you're very much participating in the wedding and being social and everything. So there was a lot of folks that went and they were, making s'mores and hanging out by the fire.
Yeah. So the s'mores station, you had like the patio outside of the reception hall where the bartenders were, which was a lot of people were just hanging out there.
Yep.
We also rented the house that was on the property. So that was another area where people can kind of retreat if they didn't want to be around all the music or they just needed to take a nap. But yeah, and there were outhouses. So that was great. Very Texan.
The reception hall itself didn't have any facilities, and so
But the outhouses were actually adorable.
Yeah, they're not real outhouses. Like, they're not a hole in the ground.
Yeah,
It was an actual flushing toilet, but in a kind of what looked like an outhouse. So
aesthetic, yeah, yeah. So that was all great, and I guess the decorations.
We knew, Let's bring that up for a second.
So I mentioned earlier kind of it was a DIY wedding, and it really was a DIY wedding. We kind of had a hand in every single part of the process and execution, planning, and everything.
Yeah, because this place that we chose, this ranch,
Mm-hmm.
there's no like packages or anything that are either expected to or even have the option of going with.
We were able to choose everything.
And we had to provide everything from the insurance to the bartender to the plates and forks and like every little thing kind of had to really be taken care of on our end, which for us I think is still the way that we are grateful that it played out like that, because we were able to make it our own. But also it was a whole lot more work because there is so much more that we had to make sure was taken care of in the especially the
There's
week
no
of.
planner or coordinator doing all that for us, but which I fully enjoy because I'm a very hands-on person. I became kind of a helicopter groom, but it all worked out. Being on a ranch kind of lent itself to like doing it your own and having this aesthetic or this not concept, but this.
Tell me about your vision board.
Just the decorations lent itself to being easy and simple.
Yeah.
And so, the chapel itself, in and of itself, was cute, and we didn't need to do anything with that.
Right.
The only thing we did was we brought out a really large runner, some vintage rugs, and, did that whole boho look. But then when it comes to the reception hall, simple, round tables, white tablecloths. I rented vintage brass candlesticks.
Yeah.
And we did 3 to 4 for each table with really large candles. And then, honestly, a lot of the decorations came from Target. Shout out to Target.
Shout out to Target, man.
Get your red card. So what's that show? Why am I blanking on the name of the show? Fixer Upper.
Yeah.
They have their own brand, which is in collaboration with Target, Magnolia and Heart or something like that.
Yeah.
But a lot of cute stuff. So I purchased a shit ton of vintage apothecary jars, clear ones of different sizes, and just did 2, 3, 4 each table, spread around between the candlesticks. And I used wildflowers, Texas wildflowers, but not a lot, just, a couple in each jar.
You were channeling Joanna Gaines.
I was,
hardcore.
yeah. And there was shiplap inside the
There was
reception
shiplap.
hall, so there you go. I'm Joanna, by the way.
Am I Chip?
Yeah. No, you're their eldest son. I don't know. Anyways, so wildflowers, Texas wildflowers. We wanted to keep it Texan.
Yeah.
So, Texan wildflowers, Texas wildflowers. It was simple. It was, I don't want to say elegant, but there was an elevated aesthetic to it, which was
Sure.
really nice.
Yeah.
I went with my mom. My mom was kind of forced behind a lot of the decoration. Her being in Seattle and me being down here, she would, add to a shared Pinterest board and text and call and send pictures every day. And every time I'd go up and visit, she's like, we're going to IKEA, we're going to Target, we're going to Joann's Fabrics, and we're going to look.
Yeah.
So that entailed a much unwanted IKEA trip, but I bought 70-something tablecloth or napkins, cloth napkins, and I ended up in Seattle removing the tags, ironing, pressing, and folding all of them, and my mom shipped them down here like a psycho. And so we used those, bought very cheap plates from IKEA, which ended up looking really nice, and then used jute or twine. I did some homemade calligraphy on a hang tag and wrapped a little wildflower in between the napkin and the name tag. So it ended up being super great.
Everything from the place settings to the you also took a bunch of twine, hung it on the walls, and took wildflowers and kind of berries and leaves and stuff like that were kind of found around outside of our home, and with clothespins hung those evenly on the line and had a bunch of those going along the wall. They looked fantastic.
Definitely added some depth to the bare walls that were in the hallway or in the reception hall. So if you weddings are stressful, yes, for sure, but it is very doable if you find a place that allows you to do what you need and what you want, and kind of lends itself to already being a naturally cute environment. Yeah. So if you have any questions, let us know.
So here's what I want to ask is now a month later, what advice do you have for any queer couples that are either starting to think about their own wedding, or they're still at the phase where maybe they don't even have a partner or anything, but they are wondering about like what their wedding could be like?
Yeah. I think so. When we were in Seattle and kind of talking about the weddings when it was first talked about, there really wasn't an issue or a nervousness behind calling venues and asking about wedding dates and what their prices were.
Sure.
But when we moved to Texas and we started looking, I think that's when a lot of this fear of like, oh, we're gonna get shut down or
like
be
a
turned
sticker
away,
shock kind of thing.
No, not sticker shock, but be turned away because it was a gay wedding.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So there was you did a lot of the hunting for the venues, and you found Tiny Tea Ranch, which was amazing. But I think going into it and having that awareness of it, depending on where you live, having that awareness of like, oh, yeah, you might be turned away. I think if you let that get in the way of having this day happen, you might not find the place that you actually like.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's great advice. Of don't let the fear of somebody turning you down keep you from at least trying to find the place that you really want, because it's out there. And I think that Austin is certainly a bit of an oasis within Texas, but there's plenty of places that would be happy to have you. And so at least ask. Yeah,
definitely.
That's definitely that. Yeah, we never, even though there was in the back of our mind a bit of a hesitation, we didn't limit ourselves of like, oh, that seems like a place that wouldn't want us. Like there was none of that, and we were able to get the place that we really wanted.
I guess beyond reception or the venue, So I did get stressed out at points throughout the planning process. So for me, looking back at it and kind of taking lesson to how it actually turned out, don't overcomplicate things. And to each their own. But the simpler you make it, the easier it's going to be for you the day of. And honestly, if you have friends and family that are there supporting you and that are rallying behind you, that's really all that matters.
Right.
And a friend made a good point. Every wedding that she's gone to, she's never remembered the place settings and kind of the small details. She only remembered the time that she had there with friends and family.
Entirely.
So definitely keep that in mind and don't forget that aspect of the wedding.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think my advice is from the bit of a religious perspective.
Yeah.
Is make it the wedding ceremony that you want and you will feel most comfortable with. For me, that was making it a much more religious and Catholic, explicitly Catholic ceremony. And if that's what you need to really feel like this is an actual sacrament and a celebration of your marriage, then like by all means insist that it be that way. But if that's not where you're at, if some of that stuff is like, oh, I start feeling like this Catholic church reminds me of all the time, all this Catholic stuff, this wedding stuff reminds me of the times that I've been turned away as a Catholic, don't put all that stuff in. Like make it sure that you are able to be in the moment with your partner in that ceremony. Like for us, that Catholic stuff was able to kind of bring us closer together. I feel like during the ceremony. If it's not gonna do that for you, cut that stuff out. Don't be afraid to make it the ceremony,
and don't feel obligated to have that in there.
Oh, not at all.
Yeah.
Nope.
Ugh. So while we're giving advice for any queer couples dreaming about their future marriage, what would you say is the gayest thing about our wedding besides the kiss?
Probably the music. I don't think
it was definitely the music.
I don't feel like your average straight wedding would have had
Robin,
that many pop hits.
Whitney Houston.
Yeah, we went. I mean, we had Boys by Lizzo on there. Like, there's stuff that I feel like for sure, like everybody loved. Yeah, everybody was out there. They're dancing to, and it should not be like, oh wow, that was a gay wedding. Like, listen to that playlist.
Our playlist definitely had a gay agenda.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The gay agenda was live and clear.
What do you think was the gayest thing about our wedding?
I think definitely the music.
Yeah,
for sure. The music and our our matching outfits. So yeah. I'm kind of bringing this back, but we had we went to Tecovas, which is also an Austin company. They do cowboy boots out here. So we got our cowboy boots. You got some Wranglers. I did Levi's, and then we just did gray blazers from J. Crew, and then we did that. That was pretty gay.
Yeah, matching is definitely.
So yeah, that was cute and easy, but
we looked good.
Yeah. Yeah, of course we did. Are you serious? Are you kidding me?
You sounded skeptical for a second there.
No, because I was like, oh, that's kind of cocky to say, but no. It was cute. It didn't look forced like some of these. Thank God I talked you out of doing a bow tie.
I didn't want a bow tie.
Oh, you wanted suspenders.
Yeah, that's what you talked me out of.
Those are cute, but not for a ranch wedding.
All right.
I'm shutting it down. So any more advice, I guess, for queer babies out there or anybody thinking about their dream wedding?
Yeah, here's the thing. Do not feel obligated to invite anybody to your wedding that is not going to be 100% supportive. Because the entire time in the back of your head, you're going to be thinking about how do they think about this? Are they going to say anything? Mm-hmm. Are they like this day should be about celebrating
you.
Not just you, but like the absolutely good and wonderful parts of your relationship.
Yeah, and if you doubt that they are affirming and fully accepting of your relationship,
do not feel obligated. Just because they've been there, like as a presence in your life.
If you think that having them there would deepen your relationship or bring you closer, maybe then yes.
And so that's the caveat, is that there are some people who it's an opportunity to step up. Like I mentioned previously on the podcast that there was a friend of my mom's who asked to come, who I would never have thought would want to be there. But she wanted to be there to celebrate. She said there's just not enough examples of real love out there in the world, and she wants to be there to celebrate it.
Mary?
Yeah.
Oh, Mary.
And she had a blast there, and like there was nothing even remotely awkward about it, even though she's like a lifelong Catholic church friend. And so I would say be open to the folks who are maybe have never shown that they are ready to take that step, but might be. But also don't feel, if you know where somebody is at, do not feel obligated to.
Even if they aren't affirming, when you just don't like the person and don't feel like they're going to add anything to your wedding, and they're just kind of a coworker or, I don't know, a family friend or a cousin that you aren't close with at all, don't invite them.
Keep that invite list small, y'all. It'll be better being an intimate wedding than see how big of a party you can throw.
Yeah, no, I was thinking, like, is there anybody on our list on my side that I didn't want there? No,
absolutely not.
We had some people drop out, so I invited some coworkers.
But they were all folks who we were like, man, they'll be a great addition.
Speaking of my coworkers, they are crazy and wild, and I don't think I'm ever going to invite them to a family function again.
Definitely don't go out on a Saturday night with them.
I'm kidding. I love them all. All right, so Patrick.
Yes.
Pat, my dear husband. It's been a month now. Who are you toasting this week?
Well, it's got a little bit of a kick to it, but I'm toasting the Vine and Fig community members who have continued to share their consolations and their desolations in our Slack community room. So for anybody who doesn't know, a consolation is a kind of a spiritual term, the way we're using it, where it's where you have found God in your life, and a desolation is where you struggle to see God. Roughly speaking, it's like a good thing and a bad thing going on in your life. And we invite our community members to share that. And I think it's really important because there's not that many places where, as a queer Catholic, you are able to really share what's going on in your heart and say, somebody at church said this that was, unaffirming or anything, and it was really hard. And to have somebody who understands what that means and why it's an actual desolation, and not like, well, that's what the Catholic Church teaches. Why do you have a problem with that? To have folks who are able to respond to that and be truly empathetic, I think is deeply important. And it just brings me a lot of joy knowing that space exists and that folks are continuing to really share what's on their heart and going on in their spiritual lives in that space. So cheers to all of them.
Cheers to them. I do want to cheers the Vine and Fig community members who also donated to our wedding registry.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there are a ton of you out there who donated, and we don't have your addresses, and we're kind of just getting to it right now, but thank you so much.
Well, we should say that we didn't do a typical wedding registry.
Yeah, we didn't do a typical wedding registry. Instead, we set up a GoFundMe charity account for the Tabard Project, which is a huge, important organization out there based in California that does a lot of work to battling suicide among youth in the LGBTQ community. They give a lot of resources and education for parents and other people, allies who want to help as well. So huge and important organization for our queer community. But we set up a charity GoFundMe and asked for donations to that instead of donations to our home.
And a lot of folks donated, especially from Vine and Fig.
Yeah,
so we're incredibly grateful to all of you.
Yeah, thank you all so much. With that, I think we raised almost $1,500.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. So who am I toasting? I'm going to toast to all those UT babies out there that I saw on the news and out when I was going to work, who turned out for early voting this year for the primaries in Texas specifically. And across the country. But Texas Dems had a 63% increase in early voting turnout for the primaries in this year versus 2016. So that's
awesome.
amazing.
Yeah.
It just goes to show that we need to continue this, continue showing up even though there's not a monster in the White House. And I don't mean to make this political, but that shouldn't be a reactionary thing. Like, this should always be a thing that we participate in as a society.
Agreed.
So cheers to them, and for sticking out there for 3 hours. I heard
over 3 hours.
Over 3 hours.
Yeah. All right. Well, cheers to all of our early voters and primary voters out there, as well as our Fine and Fit community members who are sharing what's on their hearts. Folks, you can support the podcast by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It goes a really long way to helping others find our podcast. And a big thank you to all our patrons who continue to support us on Patreon and make this show possible. That's it for us this week on Tabard In. Thanks for listening, y'all.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Oh.
Wait. It'll be over.
That's the beginning song.
Oh, shit. Okay. We done? Are we done?
Yeah.
Are we done?